controlled by what happens to them rather than controlling their responses. And so they remain stuck, frustrated, stressed, and unfulfilled. But it doesn't have to be this way. See, there is a profound difference between reacting and responding. When you react, you're controlled by impulses, habits, and emotions. You're acting without thinking, often creating more problems than you solve. Reacting is automatic. It's immediate, and it rarely considers long-term consequences. But responding, now that's different. Responding is thoughtful. It is controlled. It involves pausing, even just for a moment, to evaluate the situation clearly and deliberately. Imagine how different your life would be if instead of reacting automatically to everything around you, you learned to pause, take a breath, and consciously choose your response. Picture how your relationships, your career, your health, and even your peace of mind would improve dramatically if your decisions were driven by clarity and intention rather than impulsive reaction. The key here is to educate your mind. And education, as I've always said, is not just formal schooling. True education is developing the ability to discipline your mind, manage your emotions, and sharpen your judgment. It's teaching yourself to think clearly, even in moments of chaos. Because life, my friends, is full of chaos. Events you can't control, situations you never expected. But if you have the mental discipline to pause and respond rather than react, you regain control. See, isn't that powerful? You see the difference between these two approaches to life? You're either going to be driven by external circumstances, or you're going to take command of your own destiny. The good news is, the choice is entirely yours. You know, throughout my career, I've met countless people who have told me, Jim, if only things around me were different, I'd be more successful. I'd be happier. I'd feel more at peace. But you see, that's exactly the problem. Most people spend their lives waiting for the world to change instead of changing themselves. They're constantly reacting to external forces, hoping something outside will finally align perfectly and hand them success. And guess what? It never does. Mr. Schoaf told me years ago, don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems. Wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge. Wish for more wisdom. And that's exactly the philosophy that will move you from being reactive to being responsive. It's about personal responsibility. It's about taking ownership of your life. You see, when you're reactive, you're like a boat being tossed around on stormy seas. 1 minute you're up, and the next you're crashing back down, completely at the mercy of the waves. But when you learn to respond, you become like a skilled sailor, guiding your ship through the storm with intention, control, and purpose. The waves don't disappear, but your ability to navigate them changes dramatically. Now the question becomes, how do you educate your mind to respond? How do you break the habit of instant reaction? Well, it begins with awareness. You must first become aware of your habitual patterns. You must notice when you're about to react impulsively. Awareness is the first step toward meaningful change. You can't fix something you're not even aware of, right? So begin there. Notice your emotions. Notice when you start feeling that pressure building up, that urge to speak without thinking, or to act without considering the consequences. Recognize that impulse and simply pause. You see, the power of pausing is remarkable. Pausing creates a tiny gap, a space between stimulus and response. And it's in that small space, my friends, where your real power lies. Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist and author, put it beautifully. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Isn't that incredible? That's precisely what we're discussing here. By pausing, by creating just a moment of space, you give yourself the opportunity to choose your response rather than letting the situation choose it for you. I remember a time early in my career before I had mastered this idea. Something went wrong in my business, and immediately I reacted. I became angry, frustrated, upset. I allowed myself to get swept up in the emotion of the moment. And, predictably, I made things worse. But after I'd calmed down, I saw clearly how I could have handled the situation differently. Had I paused for just a moment, had I given myself time to think, I could have responded with wisdom instead of reacting out of anger. It was a valuable lesson, one I've never forgotten. And I promise you, if you embrace this lesson, your life will transform dramatically. Understand something important here. Your emotions aren't the problem. Emotions are natural. They're signals. The trouble begins when emotions run your life instead of you managing them. The goal isn't to become emotionless, but rather to become emotionally intelligent. To learn how to channel those feelings constructively. When you pause, you create clarity, and clarity allows you to channel your emotions effectively. Rather than letting anger derail you, use it as fuel to take purposeful action. Rather than allowing fear to paralyze you, use it as a signal to prepare yourself. See, every emotion has a positive purpose if you're willing to pause and see it. Ask yourself, how often do you allow momentary emotions to affect long-term decisions? How often does a brief flash of frustration damage a relationship, or a momentary fear hold you back from pursuing a meaningful goal? Think about that. If you look back over your life, you'll probably discover that the times you made your biggest mistakes were the times you reacted impulsively. And on the other hand, the greatest achievements, the most rewarding experiences, those happened because you responded thoughtfully, with purpose and intention. I hear it all the time. How do I get myself to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively? How do I gain the discipline to think clearly in moments when emotions are running high? Well, it's simpler than you might think. It begins with understanding that discipline isn't something you're born with. It's something you develop. Discipline is like a muscle. You exercise it daily, and gradually it grows stronger. Many years ago, I met a man who had all the talent, ambition, and intelligence he needed to succeed. But he had one little thing that had him all messed up, more of a major thing. He couldn't control his reactions. He would just lose his head so quickly, let his mouth get to the meeting 5 minutes before his brain. Every decision was based on emotion. And you know what happens when you get like that. Work starts falling apart, and friends and coworkers worried about you. He came to me one evening after a seminar and said he needed my help. He didn't know he was sabotaging himself. He thought everybody else was crazy. And how would you feel in a world full of crazy people? Probably a little crazy, right? So I told him, it begins with awareness. The next time you feel that familiar rush of emotion coming on, anger, frustration, impatience, just pause. Don't act immediately. Take a moment and simply breathe. Now here's the magic in that simple advice. When you pause, you interrupt the automatic reaction. You break the habitual cycle. And breaking that cycle gives you space to choose your response. You become conscious rather than unconscious, deliberate rather than impulsive. So this man finally decided to give it a try, pausing every time he felt himself about to react. At first, he said it was hard, said it was like I was holding back a freight train. But soon, something fascinating began to happen. Each pause became easier. His mind became clearer. And eventually, those pauses became moments of choice, powerful choice. allowing him to respond with thoughts instead of his feelings. And guess what? Things got better. Better at work, better at home, better here, better there. I'm telling you, it all gets better. And where's what so many people miss? They underestimate the power of the small disciplines. But I'm telling you, it's the smallest disciplines, practiced daily, that make the biggest difference, lasting difference. You see, every big transformation in life comes from mastering a few simple practices every day. If you want to shift your life from reaction to response, pick a small habit like pausing, breathing, or even asking yourself a simple question like, what's the best way to handle this? And do it consistently, every day. Do it intentionally, every day. And eventually, that's just who you will be, every day. I learned so many great lessons over the years just by observing successful people. They don't avoid emotions, they manage them. They use emotions as tools, not as roadblocks. They know that emotions are powerful forces, and without discipline, they'll control you. But here's the key. When you do live with discipline, you control them. Anger, fear, excitement, they all become useful. They're like signals, guiding you toward thoughtful, intelligent responses instead of blind reactions. And it's simple. Education and practice. Educate your mind to recognize emotions as signals rather than commands. And practice the discipline of choosing your responses intentionally every single day. A lot of people think they're controlled by circumstances. They think the reason they're not successful, not happy, or not fulfilled is because of what's going on around them. But I'm here to remind you, circumstances are just circumstances. They don't have power until you give them power. You see, it's your reaction or your response to those circumstances that creates your life. Circumstances happen to everybody. Rain falls on the rich and the poor alike. It's not the circumstance, but what you choose to do next that shapes everything. Years ago, I learned an incredible lesson. I was complaining to Mr. Schoaf about things happening to me. I told him about problems at work, problems with money, problems everywhere. And you know what he said? He said, Jim, it isn't what's happening to you that's the issue. It's what you're doing about it. I never forgot that. It was such a simple thought, but it completely changed my perspective. See, the problem isn't out there. The problem and the solution both start right here with me. And the moment I started responding rather than reacting, thinking rather than complaining, things began to improve immediately. Think about this for a moment. If you keep reacting to life with frustration, anger, or blame, how can you ever create something different, something better? You can't. You'll stay stuck right there, trapped by those reactions. But if you educate your mind to respond, to pause, evaluate, and choose your next move wisely, then guess what? You immediately put yourself on a new path, a path that leads somewhere better, a path to growth, success, happiness, everything you really want. I remember vividly, early in my career, things weren't going well. I was broke. I was frustrated. I was blaming everything and everyone. But Mr. Schoaf pulled me aside and told me something I've never forgotten. He said, Jim, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. Now, doesn't that just make sense? Yet most people keep reacting the same way, year after year, and wonder why life never changes. If you want different results, you must first educate yourself to respond differently. Make better choices, form better habits. Because it's your choices, your responses that shape your destiny. And I won't mislead you either. Changing your responses isn't complicated, but it does take practice. You have to work at it daily. You have to become conscious of how you're reacting and consciously choose to respond better. Every time you do it, it becomes easier. Every time you pause, think, and act deliberately, you strengthen that discipline muscle. Before long, responding becomes automatic. Thoughtful action becomes second nature. And guess what? Success becomes second nature too. Fulfillment becomes second nature. I'm telling you, friends, life gets better when you do. People say, if things around me would just change, I'd have a better life. If Ronnie didn't steal my promotion, I'd have a better job. Well, guess what I've found out after all these years? It doesn't work that way. And Ronnie probably figured that out too. It's not his fault. I would be asking Ronnie how he did it. And Ronnie will probably tell you the same thing Mr. Schoaf told me. The same thing that every successful person knows. If you want things to change for you, you've got to change. Not the weather, not your boss, not your neighbors, just you. It's really that simple. See, circumstances, they're going to happen. Problems, they're going to show up. That's life. Life has seasons, and some of those seasons are tough. Winter always comes, and it doesn't care if you're ready or not. Now, you can't control winter. You can't control the spring, summer, the fall. So remember that. You cannot control the seasons, but here's what you can control. You can control yourself. You can control your responses, your choices, and your habits. You can control what you do next. You know, Mr. Schoaf taught me early on that it's not what happens to us that determines our future. It's what we do about what happens. Most people miss that. They let circumstances push them around, reacting without thought, hoping something external will change and magically make everything better. But you and I both know life doesn't work that way. You've got to step up and make the change happen within you. And when you do, everything around you changes. Now, here's a little secret I've learned. Life gets easier when you get better. Not easier because problems disappear, but easier because you get stronger. Easier because you learn to pause, think clearly, and respond with wisdom instead of emotion. Easier because your habits start to support you rather than sabotage you. That's powerful stuff. And it all starts by educating your mind. Every day, just practice responding instead of reacting. Pause for just a second. Ask yourself, is this how I want to handle this? It's a small step, sure, but small steps repeated daily. That's the magic. That's how transformations happen. Practice a little discipline today, tomorrow, and the next day. Pretty soon you're different. Pretty soon life gets different. Better at work, better at home, better everywhere. It just keeps getting better, and it all begins with you. You see, here's something powerful to think about. If you keep waiting for external conditions to change, for the right people to show up, or the economy to get better, you could be waiting a long time. You might be waiting forever. I found out early, the hard way, that the only sure way to improve your life is to improve yourself. It's to educate your own mind to respond wisely, no matter what's happening around you. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time waiting for things to get better, waiting for my paycheck to increase, waiting for someone else to recognize my talent. But you know what I discovered? Waiting doesn't work. Waiting leads nowhere. See, waiting is reacting. Waiting for circumstances, waiting for someone else's decisions, waiting for things outside your control. And I decided enough of that. Why wait when you can act? Why wait for something outside yourself when you can choose right now to make a difference inside yourself? Now, here's the key. You've got to start making small changes today, right now. Don't wait until tomorrow, because tomorrow leads to next week, and next week leads to next year. And pretty soon, you're looking back over your life, wondering where the time went. Start today with a simple discipline. Pause when you feel angry. Take a breath when you're frustrated. Think before you act. And soon enough, you'll notice you're responding differently. You're choosing wisely. And little by little, these small actions begin to reshape your entire life. And remember, success doesn't happen by accident. Success is a result of your choices, your habits, and your daily responses. It's not luck, it's not chance, and it's definitely not someone else's fault. Ronnie isn't responsible for your success. Your boss isn't responsible. You, and only you, are responsible. When you finally accept this idea, you become powerful. Powerful because your destiny isn't dependent on anyone else. Your future belongs completely to you, and that's a beautiful place to be. And people always think they need big, dramatic changes to improve their lives, but that's not true. It's usually the smallest changes that make the biggest differences. It's those simple daily disciplines repeated consistently over time that transform your entire life. Pausing, reflecting, responding intentionally. These aren't big actions. They're tiny, manageable steps. But those tiny steps done consistently eventually lead to massive results. Think about it. Most people underestimate what they can accomplish by simply improving how they respond each day. They think it's too simple. But here's the truth. The most powerful ideas are always simple. People make life complicated, but success isn't complicated. Success is about doing simple things consistently, every day, over and over again. Respond instead of react. Choose your words wisely. Think before you act. Every single day. And eventually, guess what? You become the kind of person who naturally succeeds, no matter what life throws your way. People say to me, I just want things to calm down, and then I'll handle things better. But here's the truth. Things don't calm down. Life stays busy. Challenges keep coming. So if you keep waiting for life to get easier before you respond better, you'll be waiting forever. It doesn't work like that. You've got to respond better first. And when you do, suddenly things feel easier. It's like that old saying, you can't calm the ocean, but you can learn how to sail. That's exactly it. You can't change everything around you, but you can become a better sailor. You can educate yourself. You can practice daily disciplines. You can respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. When you do these things, everything around you feels calmer. Not because it changed, but because you changed. That's the difference. Remember, life isn't meant to be smooth sailing all the time. Sometimes the seas are rough, but that's good news, because rough seas make good sailors. And good sailors handle rough seas differently. They're prepared, disciplined, thoughtful. They respond. They know when to pause, when to act, and when to adjust their sails. And because they respond wisely, rough waters don't frighten them. They excite them. They know that each storm brings new skills, new wisdom, new strength. You have to decide right now what kind of sailor you're going to be. You can keep hoping for calm seas, or you can educate your mind, develop your disciplines, and become someone who can handle anything that comes. Make that decision today. Because your future depends not on circumstances, but on how you respond to those circumstances. And here's the beautiful part. When you master responding, you become powerful. Powerful because you're no longer tossed around by every storm. Powerful because your emotions don't control you. You control your emotions. Powerful because you can navigate through life with intention and clarity. That's the kind of power that changes everything. I used to wonder why some people seem to handle life better. Do they have fewer problems? Fewer obstacles? Were they just lucky? But what I found out was that they had learned to master their responses. They weren't reacting impulsively, making things worse. They were thoughtful. They were deliberate. And because of that, life felt easier. Problems weren't smaller. They were just better at handling them. They understood something powerful. You don't need fewer problems, you need better responses. Now think about this. Most people, when faced with challenges, react emotionally. They panic. They get frustrated. They lose sight of solutions. I used to do that too. But then I learned from Mr. Schoaf that every challenge carries an opportunity to respond better, to grow stronger, to become wiser. So instead of getting emotional, I started getting thoughtful. Instead of complaining, I started asking myself, what's the best thing I can do next? And every time I did that, guess what happened? Things got better. Not immediately, maybe not overnight, but steadily and consistently better. Think about how powerful this can be in your life. Imagine handling difficult conversations without anger. Imagine dealing with setbacks without panic. Imagine moving forward confidently, regardless of the circumstances. That's not wishful thinking. That's what happens when you educate your mind to respond instead of react. It changes your entire life, piece by piece, decision by decision. And soon, you hardly recognize the person you used to be. Because now you're someone who can handle anything life sends your way. So don't spend your life wishing things were easier. Spend your life becoming stronger, wiser, more disciplined. Take control of your responses. Practice small daily habits, because those habits, practiced consistently, will create the life you really want. And here's the best news of all. You can start right now. You don't have to wait for better circumstances. You don't have to wait for permission. Just start with the very next thing that happens. Pause, breathe, think, then respond. Keep doing it day by day, and you'll soon see your entire life transform. It's not complicated. People love to make things complicated, but the answers are always simple. And responding instead of reacting is one of those simple answers. You don't need special training. You don't need luck. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need to start. Do it today, do it tomorrow, do it every day, and watch as your whole life improves, not because circumstances changed, but because you did. You see, success in life is about becoming better, not waiting for things around you to get easier. If you're waiting for external conditions to line up perfectly, you'll be waiting forever. But if you take control right now, educate your mind, practice daily disciplines, and master responding rather than reacting, your life will begin to shift immediately. Think about this. What if you started today? What if, instead of blaming circumstances, you accepted full responsibility for your choices? What if, instead of waiting for change, you became the change? I'll tell you what would happen. Your life would improve dramatically. Here's the powerful truth. The only thing separating you from the life you want is your willingness to respond intentionally. It's not about luck, talent, or circumstances. It's about choices, daily choices, disciplined choices, choices made with clarity and intention. That's how you move from frustration to the fulfillment. So don't spend another minute blaming circumstances or waiting for the world to get better. Start today, right now. Make the small, simple decision to respond instead of react. Make it your habit. Make it your discipline. Make it your daily practice. Because when you change your responses, everything else changes too. Let me leave you with this final thought that I got from Mr. Schoaf. He said, Jim, Life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it empowering? It means you're not a victim of circumstance. You're the master of your destiny. The future belongs to those who educate their minds, discipline their responses, and practice daily habits that shape success. So don't wait. Start today. Respond wisely. Act deliberately, and watch how quickly your life transforms. Not because circumstances improved, but because you did. Your life can change dramatically, starting right now. Keep practicing, keep growing, keep responding intentionally. And as you do, success will follow, happiness will follow, and fulfillment will be yours. Make the decision today to become the kind of person who responds rather than reacts. Because when you do, your life will never be the same.